Those of you who know the Tulsi song, I will sing part of it. Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Namaha. Tulasi Krishna Radha Krishna Seva Pavu Hey Abilasi Radha Krishna Seva Pavu Hey Abilasi Radha Krishna Seva Pavu Hey Abilasi Hey Abilasi Je tumhara sarana loy Kadavancha purna hai Tumhara sarana loy Kripa kori koro thari Vrindavan vasi Kripa kori vasi Tulsi Maharani ki Tulsi Maharani ki Tulsi Maharani ki. Okay, everyone's awake. I'm glad. It's much easier to speak to an awake group than a sleeping group. I have to speak a little louder to wake them up normally. So, who is Tulsi Devi? So that's a very important question. Who she is and why she is worshipped. It's important to have some idea. We worship the plant every day. We circumambulate the plant. And just to show how important she is, most of us devotees wear these what we call Tulsi beads around the neck. The Tulsi beads, which are worn around the neck, are made of the wood from Tulsi. And sometimes when we are preparing foodstuffs and we offer them to the Lord, we place a Tulsi leaf on the foodstuffs because Krishna is very, very fond of Tulsi. Not very fond, but very, very fond of Tulsi. One of his most lovable devotees for Krishna. And we can see why, and let me just go a little bit into the background. To go back, this takes place in Satyuga millions of years ago. So the children, please take them out of the room. Yeah, now I don't speak if the children are competing. Yeah, you have to take them out, please. Otherwise, we send the dog catchers up there with the big nets. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Otherwise, nobody gets a chance to hear because I keep getting distracted and by losing my place and we get nowhere. That's why I put such an emphasis on this. So it starts in Goloka Vrindavan. Goloka Vrindavan is one of the Vaikuntha planets, the highest Vaikuntha planet. And Tulsi Devi, her name is not Tulsi in Goloka Vrindavan, which is Krishna's main and chief place where he has his pastimes in the spiritual world. Her job, her duty is mainly to make arrangements for Radha and Krishna. And the arrangements that she makes is she finds different glades and different groves where they can have their different pastimes, where Ras Leela can take place, the dancing can take place, the playing of instruments, the offering of food, massaging of feet. So Radha and Krishna are very close and very intimate. And Tulsi's business is to find different places for them where they can stay. Beautiful flowers, birds chirping, parrots making imitations, and different types of beautiful places. Now the child has to be taken out. Thank you. So, anyway, Tulsi's business is very, very important. Her name isn't Tulsi at that time, it's Vrinda Devi. Okay, so we all have that. In the spiritual world, Tulsi is called Vrinda Devi. When she comes into this world, she becomes known as Tulsi, and I'll explain why. Anyway, what's happened is that normally Radharani, she likes to introduce her friends to Krishna and sets up nice meetings with him. But she is the chief of all the gopis. And as we know that if somebody is the chief, if you want to speak to someone who's very close to her, the proper thing, the respectful thing is to ask the chief. And if the chief gives approval, then you go ahead. So one day it just happens to be that Vrinda Devi was out looking for some new quarters or new places for the pastimes to take place. So in the course of doing that, she met Krishna. So instead of just nodding and moving on, she began to have a very close and intimate conversation without permission from Srimati Radharani. So when Srimati Radharani found out about this, she became very angered because this was not the normal thing to do. So when Vrinda Devi came back, she said, why were you having this close, intimate conversation without first talking to me about it? You know that that's the way we do things. And of course, Vrinda Devi didn't have anything to say. So Radharani began to scold her. And she scolded her, and Vrinda Devi didn't say anything. In fact, she got so heavy on her, she said, you're acting in a way that the human beings act, the lower human beings, where they do things without respect, without reference to higher authority or anything like that. And therefore, you deserve not to even be on this upper planetary system called Goloka Vrindavan. You belong down with the earthlings. So therefore I will curse you, and you can stay there for some time, become purified in the process, and then come back when your purification has been completed. So Vrinda Devi just accepted this, and Krishna happened to have been there, and he said, well, while you're down there, you should just pray and perform austerities to get Lord Vishnu as your husband. That was his instruction to her. And in a short while, by the way, she was an incarnation of Lakshmi Devi, who is an incarnation of Srimati Radharani. So these are divine beings. They're not ordinary human beings. So Tulsi Devi, the reason she was called Tulsi Devi when she was born, and Madhavi, she was born from Dharmadwaj, King Dharmadwaj and Madhavi. And when she came out, she was so beautiful, so gorgeous, so lovable, so delectable to look at. So Tulsi means very pretty, very beautiful. So they gave her that name, Tulsi. Devi is added because Devi means goddess. And actually she is a goddess because she's an incarnation of Mahalakshmi. So it didn't take long for Tulsi Devi to grow up and to know what her desire would be. And her chief desire would be, as Krishna said, to perform austerities or mortifications or penances in order to get Lord Vishnu as her husband. So that's what she did. She went to Badrinath, high up in the Himalayas. Anybody been to Badrinath here? Huh? Yeah. So, it's very high. It's a little bit very cold in the winter. Nice place to go in the summer. And she went there and she performed penances, not for 10 years, not for 100 years, not for 500 years, not for 1,000 years, 100,000 years. Long time. In those days, they lived, in Satya Yuga, people lived up to 100,000 years and more. And then in the next stage, it was 10,000 years. In the next age, Dwapara Yuga, 1,000 years. And now in this age, if you get to 100, you're lucky. With good medication, of course. So, therefore, she performed her austerities. She was praying always, performing difficulties. What are some of the difficulties? Well, for one thing, she just lived on fruits and vegetables for many years. And then she began to live just on leaves for many years, fresh leaves. And then she lived on dry leaves. You know, the dry leaves that we see falling on the ground here? She lived on those for many, many years. And then she lived only on water for many, many years. Then she lived only on air. She knew some yogic techniques so you can change the air or the ether into substance in the body. And then she lived on nothing. So therefore she did a lot of penance. And finally Lord Brahma came and visited her one day, and he said, "My dear goddess Tulsi, you've performed so much penance for so many years. Obviously you are doing this for a reason. What is the reason?" She says, "Well, I want Lord Vishnu as my husband." So he said, "Definitely you will have Lord Vishnu as your husband, but before you have Lord Vishnu as your husband, there's somebody else who wants you as his wife." So she says, "Somebody?" She says, "Yes. In the spiritual world, if you remember, Krishna had a friend called Sudama, very close friend, very intimate friend of Krishna. And Sudama was always looking at you and very attracted to you, but he never really got the chance to really get to know you. And so he has been performing penance just as you have been doing for thousands of years with two purposes. One of which he wanted you as his wife, and the second one is he wanted to have complete control over the entire universe. So, therefore, the best thing for you to do is to marry him, and after you marry him and you finish up with your life here on earth, then you can marry Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu, he has 4 different wives. Ganga Devi is one of his wives. Saraswati is one of his wives. Mahalakshmi is one of his wives. And Tulsi Devi is the 4th of his life in the Vaikuntha planets. In Goloka, that is not the case. The chief gopi is Radharani. And there are seconds and thirds and fourth. So she said, "Don't you worry about that Lord Vishnu will be your husband after you finish your business down here." So she said, "Well, okay." Anyway, he went to Lord Brahma. He went to Pushkar, where Sankachud, that was the name of the king, who happened to have been Sudama in the past life. His name is Shankachud, okay? You all got it? Let's all say it. Shankachud. Good. Okay, it's easy to remember when you say it a few times. So Shankachud was performing the penances, and that I've already stated what he wanted. And so when he stated he wanted to be the most powerful person in the world, he wanted to be able to conquer all the demigods, then Lord Brahma said, "I grant you your wish, because you have done so much penance. So here, take this amulet." You wear it around here. It is a Krishna amulet, a kavacha, and no one can kill you as long as you are wearing that amulet. Okay? Come right in. Say hello. Meet the family. Hare Krishna. So, anyway, nobody can kill you if you're wearing the amulet. But if you take it off or somebody takes it from you, you're vulnerable. He said that's number 1. Number 2 is the wife or the woman that you marry must remain chaste just to you. If she loses her chastity to somebody else, then you will be vulnerable. So those 2 things must be in place. Wear the amulet and make sure your wife stays chaste and pure. He said, "Okay, so come with me, and I will now introduce you to the woman whom you have always had your eye on, even in the Goloka Vrindavan." So he introduced her to Tulsi Devi, and Tulsi Devi gave him really a hard time. She asked him many different questions, like to put him through a whole rigmarole to find out whether he was qualified to be her husband, because she was quite choosy. Remember, this is not an ordinary woman. This is a woman with a lot of philosophical knowledge. In fact, she put down women. She was saying, "Well, why do you want to even get married to me? How do you know I won't cheat on you? How do you know I won't do this?" And so he says, "Look, I don't care about any of those things. All I know is I just want to marry you." So she figured, if he's that interested, no sense in keep peltering him with questions. So they got married in what they call the Gandharva fashion, which is pretty much the way it's done today. They just pretty much acclaimed their love for one another. She was very beautiful, and he was extremely handsome. So they went here and they went there. Remember, he was a king. So now what happened was that being a king and having all the power that he had, he was able to travel in the airplanes that demigods had. And traveling in the airplanes, he was able to, with his men, with his soldiers, with his army, he was able to conquer all the different planets and push all the demigods out of their planets. So that instead of, for example, Surya doing the administration of the sun, Shankachud, he had his own men doing that. Or the wind god, Vayu, he had his men. So all the demigods were pushed out. They lost their position. They lost their possessions. They lost their wealth. They had nothing. So what do the demigods do when they become dispossessed, when they have nothing, when they're helpless, when they feel worthless? What do? Not immediately, but eventually they do get there. Yes, first person they go to is Lord Brahma. He's like the chief of the demigods, so to speak, above Indra. So Brahma said, yes, we have a very good case. Let us talk to Lord Vishnu and we will decide, see what he has to say. So they went to Lord Vishnu and Lord Vishnu said to them, I understand that Shankachud has been misusing his power. He's become like an unholy terror, frightening and scaring and pushing people out of their positions. So he has to be dealt with accordingly. So what he did is that he had to figure out some way in which to destroy him, to kill him. But as long as he had the amulet, there was no way that he could kill him. As long as his wife was chaste, there was no way that he could kill him. So two things had to be done. He had to get the amulet, and he had to figure out some way to cause his wife to become unchaste. So what he did is that he, as we know, Lord Vishnu is a person of many, many faces and many different forms. So he changed himself into a little old Brahmin, kind of bent over, and he approached Shankachud, and he said, let me just state further that there was a war that took place. In fact, Lord Vishnu assigned Lord Shiva to leading the army that would fight Shankachud's army. And there was a big war. It was going on day after day. And Shankachud was really mopping up the war grounds. He was an extremely able fighter. And so again, the demigods, they approached Lord Vishnu. What are we going to do? If we can't kill him, then we're going to lose. So he said, don't worry, I will take care of this. So he made himself into an old-looking Brahmin, and he approached Shankachud on the battlefield, and he said, excuse me, but that beautiful pendant or that amulet you have, I could very much use something like that. So because Shankachud also had some very devotional qualities, since he was a friend of Lord Krishna, Sudama, in his previous life, he said, what would you like? He says, well, I would like to have it. Could you give it to me? So he said, well, of course, here. So he took the amulet off. Okay, one down, one to go. So therefore, he was now bereft of that. The next thing that would have to be done is somehow to compromise the chastity of his wife, Tulsi. And she was in palace. And so what Lord Vishnu did is the battle was going on. So what Lord Vishnu did is he assumed the position or assumed the form, the face, the voice, everything of her husband. So then what happened is he entered in and he had outside a band playing, a victory band, that as if Lord Shiva had won the battle. Actually, it was a lie. There was no battle. He hadn't won anything. The battle was still raging, but it was in a distance. So what happened was that he came in, and she said, "Glory to you, triumph. I see you have won this battle. He says, of course I've won the battle. It's all over now. She said, well, Lord Shiva is not an easy person to fight and to defeat. How did you do it? He said, well, I worked hard at it, and somehow or other I was able to do it. So anyway, they became, she embraced him and welcomed him in. She gave him a seat, gave him something to eat, and then they became very close and very intimate. And somehow during the period of intimacy, she noticed that there was something different. This was didn't feel like her husband. So she was wondering, who is this person? He's doing things differently than my husband does. And why is this going on? And then she kind of pushed away from him. She says, you're not my husband. You're an imposter. I can sense, I can feel, I can see it. I see it. Why have you done this? Why have you deceived me? Of course, he compromised he had compromised her purity in this particular situation, because in other words, there were 2 points. The first was the amulet, and the second was that her purity could not be, or her chastity could not be compromised. So both had been compromised, and when that happened in the battlefield, as the battle was raging, Lord Shiva took complete control, and he was able to kill Sankachud. Otherwise, he was unable to do that. So Tulsi became very angry back in the palace, and she said, this is horrible, this is terrible. Just to win a battle, win a war, you have deceived me. She says, you're just a stone-hearted person. And for that, I'm going to curse you. You should become a stone. Yes, a stone. So he accepted the curse, and becoming a stone, he would become Saligram Shila. Okay? That's how it was her curse. But he didn't have to accept it. But that would be for our benefit, because so many of us have Saligram Shilas in our homes, and we worship them, and they are the same as worshiping Lord Vishnu. So what happened is then he counter-cursed her, but it wasn't really a curse, it was a blessing. And he said to her, when you leave your body, when you abandon it, your body will become the Gandaki River, okay? And your hair will become all the Tulsi plants. That was the benediction. So this is what happened. She left her body, and she went back to the spiritual world, and her hair manifested into countless Tulsi plants. So someone may ask, well, how could that be? Because there's one soul. How could one soul be in all these different plants? So just as the Lord himself, as super soul, can be in so many different hearts, billions and trillions, similarly, he can award, or he can grant that power to his devotee, which he actually does. So Tulsi manifests here, there, and everywhere. Those of you who have a Tulsi plant in California, those in New York, same Tulsi, but she is manifested in these different forms. So therefore, this is wonderful. And she gives numerous blessings. Because she is very dear to Krishna, we will see on the altar, when you get close, you'll see on the feet of Krishna, you'll see the Tulsi leaves. Why? Because he loves Tulsi, and he likes to have her. Since she loves him and wants to always be at his feet, she, in turn, is always there. And we see devotees, we worship her every day. I sang a few of the lines of the Tulsi song, and so she is extremely, very, very important. Anyway, so what happened was this, very important, is that the Lord became manifest as a stone, because she cursed him to be a stone. And the Gandaki River is down below, and then there's a high mountain, and on top there are all these stones. And these stones are generally eaten by little worms. They eat into the stone, and they form rings. And each stone has different number of rings. And according to the number of rings that are on the stone, different benefits ensue. Now, I wrote a book. It's called The Life of Tulsi Devi, and you can read that book on ISKCON Desire Tree. If you go on ISKCON Desire Tree, you'll see the book. It says The Story of Tulsi Devi. Very easy to remember, ISKCON Desire Tree, online. You can get it, and the whole book is there. Or you can hear the whole drama, the whole narration, which I've just given a very small essence of. It's available either from me or you can get it from Krishna.com. I can download it to anyone who wants to hear it. It goes on for about 7 or 8 hours, and it's very easy to listen to. Music, sound effects, different characters, all played by myself, including the females. Some of the ladies didn't like the idea that I was taking the lady parts. So I said, would you have shown up for all the rehearsals if I asked you to do so? She said, well, I don't think I'd have the time. That's why I did all the lady parts. So, because I knew I would be there. Others might not be there. Anyway, to just complete or consummate the story, is that Tulsi went back to the eternal world with Lord Vishnu, and she did have him as her husband, number one. But she also had Krishna as her husband too, because she's always at the feet of Krishna. She's on Krishna's feet, and that's what she wanted, because she is the par excellence devotee. A devotee always wants to be at the feet of the Lord, glorifying him, honoring him, praying to him, thanking him, all of this and so much more, because she's so appreciative of the fact that she has this association, which is all love, which is all peace, which is all strength, which is all joyfulness. And when you have that, you have everything. Because it's something which we get within ourselves. When you have that feeling of joy, of peace and strength and love and happiness within, then no matter what happens outside, externally, it doesn't disturb, it doesn't shake, it doesn't upset. It's just there and you deal with it. As opposed to becoming, oh my God, I'll never get through this. This is too difficult. Yesterday it was worse, and today it's. You don't get that, because Krishna's water of love is flowing through us, and flowing through us, we feel peaceful and strong and able and ready to take on whatever the responsibilities may be in order to attain or accomplish whatever we have to. So I'll take one question, because I can see they're getting ready for the ceremony. Is there any question that anyone may have based on what I've spoken? Not something controversial about ISKCON and the like. Not the time or the place. No questions? No? Well, I want to thank you all very much for being such an attentive audience. It's been my pleasure, and I hope you enjoy the ceremony. And again, if you want to read this story in its full version, please, again, ISKCON Desire Tree, you can read it right on your screen. Or if you want to hear it, you can either get the disc from me, or you can order it from upstairs and the guests, whichever. Thank you so much. All glories to Tulsi Devi ki. Tulsi Devi ki. Tulsi Devi ki. And if it had not been for Srila Prabhupada ki, none of us would be here tonight. Thank you. Hari Bol.